Hello, everyone. Excited to have Elena Whisler here from the Clearinghouse. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So real quick introduction. My name's Kara. I'm the Director of Partnerships for North America for Currency Cloud. Really excited for our Spotlight Superhero series with Elena. We're going to talk a lot about RTP today. So thanks so much for coming onto the show. So first off, maybe Elena, I know that a lot of our audience already probably know who the Clearinghouse is, but a lot of them probably might not. So if you could maybe start off just talking a little bit about the Clearinghouse, what you do and your role there.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Thank you so much. So my name's Elena Whisler. I'm responsible for our sales, relationship management, and marketing function and all the teams that basically talk to the industry day to day. So we communicate with our customers as well as our prospects in order to collaborate and move the ecosystem forward around payments in general. RTP being front and center, obviously, because everyone loves talking about it, including myself. But talking about payments, account-based transactions, and the evolution that's going along with it. The Clearinghouse is a private sector operator. It mainly functions as an organization that processes ACH transactions, high-value wire transactions, check images, as well as RTP, so real-time payment transactions. So we have those payment networks, and we run those day to day. And then we have additional services, member-driven services to provide education, to provide audit facilities, as well as advocacy for our community and our clients as to, how do we better the payment system in general? How do we collaborate with Capitol Hill, for example? How do we collaborate with other regulatory authorities to make the payment system better?
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. And maybe for the audience as well, I think, we've been hearing a lot about RTP, right? Real-time payments, but what does that actually mean, right? It means something different in every country. And we probably have people on the line that are dialing in from a lot of different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about the RTP initiative, what it means specifically for the US, and kind of what makes RTP a little bit more forward or better than some of the more traditional payment routes?
Yeah, no, great question. So the RTP network actually went live November of 2017. So we have seen the volume continue to grow, seen use cases continue to be unlocked. So we can talk about real-time payments for the ecosystem, not just as a market infrastructure, but as, how do businesses change and take advantage of the RTP network? How do individuals receive those transactions, and what's that experience like? That's very similar to other countries around the world. So, there's over 56 countries, I think, that have some form of faster payments or real-time payments initiatives. Our real-time payments initiative, the RTP network, is 24/7. Is ISO 20022 payload, so very global standard, focused on that, and interoperability with other countries, for example. And it serves not only, we always talk about the payment, but it's really also the experience. So part of our network, what it provides is obviously a credit transfer, moving money in real time. So the payment moves, the message moves, but also the settlement moves between the financial institutions and therefore the customers. But then we have a set of non-payment messages that really, this is really where I think innovation is unlocked, and where the change of behavior, it really begins to see the effects of a real-time payment. So confirmation of a payment, statuses of those transactions, and the one that we're really focusing for, the next wave of innovation is request for payment. Mm-hmm. So request for payment is really important. It's always funny. People are like, well, what does that mean? What is request for payment? I'm like, well, just say the word slowly. It's a request. And it takes, it even takes me time to digest, to say that's someone asking for money, right, at the end of the day. But it carries a certain payload with it to allow businesses, for example, maybe to reconcile what an invoice is to an actual payment, partial or full payment, right? And we're doing a lot related to reimagining maybe how bill pay works, because bill pay in the US is tricky. There's a lot of different nuances, and there's a lot of providers out there. And so request for payment is a way for customers to be able to receive a request with basically your invoice, and then to be able to pay at the time you need it to be paid on the due date, scheduled in advance. But we talk about the precision of that payment. So it doesn't have to necessarily leave my account faster or the business's account faster. It's, I want it right now, so I'm going to pay it right now because the funds are available and available to be withdrawn and sent over.
That's amazing.
So that's, yeah, a bit of the, and a lot of other countries have this too. I think everyone starts with a different place of innovation, a different place of what problem are we trying to solve. And some countries have regulatory mandates, some have market-driven mandates like us, like ourselves. And so the way we get to the end goal might be different, but we learn from each other all the time. We see what UK Faster Payments is doing with Australia, with NPP and all others. So it's a fun ride so far.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful background. And I think I know that that's a key piece of the payment issue today, right? Is being able to actually reconcile that payment with the invoice. And so that's a key differentiator for sure. So I would love to talk a little bit about adoption, right? Because as you mentioned, RTP has been live since 2017. And I think that if you look at the numbers, and I won't quote them because I probably won't get them right, but the adoption's been pretty amazing so far. But I believe that a lot of the adoption has been sometimes by some of the larger financial institutions. And there's a big push to try to get more of the mid-sized financial institutions to adopt. So can you talk a little bit about that initiative and the plan around driving more adoption in the U.S.?
Yeah, that's a great question. It all starts somewhere, and there's always, our larger financial institutions have had a huge influence into building and helping us build a network for ubiquity for all institutions, because they have payments for everyone, just like the medium to small ones. We look at different initiatives within the clearinghouse to help reach all size financial institutions. And we, here in the US, there's such a large ecosystem of, diverse players, right? And you have processors and service providers and bankers banks and corporate credit unions, and they're all really important to our ecosystem. So we rely on those partners a lot. We work with a lot of what we call third-party service providers. These really are the enablers for medium, small institutions that rely on their processing, partners or vendors to handle the payment process. So we work with a lot of those. We have over 20, maybe 22, 25 on our website that process RTP transactions today on behalf of financial institutions. So that's really exciting to kind of mass enable those where we can. And then we work with bankers, banks, and corporate credit unions, as well as other aggregators, I'll call it, that help not only payment processing, but also the settlement side. I mean, there's two sides to this, and the liquidity management can get tricky depending on what these institutions do or don't do. And so we have almost all bankers banks available for funding agents. So really talking about treasury within the institution and managing the settlement funds. And we're working with corporate credit unions as well. So that ecosystem is really what magnifies the ubiquity and the growth. So we can't be everywhere at all times. I don't think anybody can, but we always appreciate our partners very much in driving ubiquity.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That makes sense, right? Because I think a lot of the financial institutions, especially the smaller ones, they don't have their own tech stack. And so they do rely so much on their partners to roll out this, the new opportunities for payments. What sort of initiatives? I mean, one thing that we see with banks is just the large number of projects they could focus on, right? And how to prioritize and how to determine that a project like RTP is more important than something else. What have you guys been doing in terms of education or just trying to help banks understand some of the value that's in RTP and what the market looks like in terms of adoption?
Yeah, that's a good question. We usually see it in a few different areas. It depends how the organization wants to participate in the RTP network. So they can there are certain ways you can participate as what we call a receive only model, where the institution's receiving those transactions and the benefit lies in the customer, right? The customer receives the payment maybe faster than it would have, or it carries more data. So the value proposition statement of prioritizing RTP, like a project within that organization, is going to be focused on customer retention, customer value. What can they now offer, related to that? We speak a lot about the gig economy, but and the last year and a half being a bit of a whirlwind related to getting food, going places or not. And so the ride sharing companies, the drivers that deliver food, for example, they need their payroll, their payment more readily. We all need our money a little bit faster to facilitate the day-to-day cash and activity that we might have. So RTP might seem small in that capacity, but for those individuals that can receive their payment after working for that day immediately, or after a ride, is really important. And that's a certain value that those institutions would get by being a receive only.
Yep.
It's a different priority on the origination side. And for us, when we talk about RTP, it's never siloed in the context of just joining a network. It's focused on what is your digital strategy? What is your focus related to digital payments, and having that experience across your online banking, for example, or across that channel in order to initiate payments. And then RTP is a piece of that. It's always a piece of a bigger problem that they're solving.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so when you look at the menu of options available, right, ACH is, I think, in terms of the major availability we've had for kind of lower dollar payments thus far. And there are benefits and struggles to ACH, right? Very cost effective, but issues around timing sometimes, that kind of thing. You also look at the card options out there, right? And do you have some sort of push to debit or other type of instant payment that way? How do you look at RTP and kind of where that fits and some of the pros and cons of across those different menu of options? Because sometimes, especially with fintechs, they may prioritize, again, like if they're starting from scratch, okay, what sort of payments do I look at first, right? Do I hook into the card networks? Do I do ACH to start, right? Or do I just start straight off with RTP?
Yeah, I think it's a great problem to have for the fintechs when there's so many amazing options. What from a customer perspective, corporate or consumer, what they want is choice. Yep. And so either fortunately or unfortunately, you have to give them probably a little bit of everything, right? Yep. So virtual cards have its place. ACH has its place. I mean, ACH is growing, over 10% year over year, right? So there is a lot of place in there, and the same with RTP. So depending on what the customer wants to do, they need that flexibility and choice. For fintechs, in my prior life, I was at a fintech, and I love that dichotomy of knowing, well, you have to at least have X amount of feature function, and then you can add on. At the same time, you can leapfrog what other organizations have done, start with RTP, for example, and revolutionize how payments work. So it depends what kind of fintech you might want to be.
That makes sense. And I'm kind of excited to see, who might take that leap and just say, no, RTP first, right? And obviously there needs to be kind of widespread adoption, to be able to do that. But I feel as though from the numbers I'm seeing, it's not too far off from being able to do that, right?
Yeah, no, it's certainly, RTP, the network and the transactions are in the thick of it. There's a lot of fintechs, depending on what space you're in. Wallets now have an incredible importance in the market in terms of moving money, cross-border transactions. Like there's a lot of place there for real-time payments globally.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know we're coming up on time here, but I would love to just open the floor for you to talk about anything else. I know we talked a little bit about the bill pay piece and request for payment, which is super exciting, but anything else that's on your mind that you want to share with our audience?
Well, I just want to share, always think about, the use cases that we have, always visualize and you can see what's really out there. So either payroll, being revolutionized, either, merchant settlement changing, cross-border. We have a payments nerd podcast that I'll mention that really brings those use cases and experiences to light across the ecosystem, and we'd love more ideas on new ones. So
wonderful. Well, maybe we'll have to grab that link and put it in the comments after, so that people can access the podcast. I think the more education, the better. All right. So one last question as we close up here. Do you think that RTP will completely replace ACH someday, or do you think we'll continue to have this menu of options?
That's a great question. I love ACH. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I think we have a different experience than other countries related to the power of what ACH provides. Will some of that traffic move over? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Will the beauty of ACH continue? Absolutely. Yeah. But you never know.
Yeah. To your point, put them all in the race and may the best win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Elena, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciated your insights. And we'll get that link to your podcast so we can continue learning about all the amazing things that Clearinghouse is doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.